And joining me now to take a deeper dive into the race and what's going on in South Carolina is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, the big South Carolina primaries Saturday, your home state. We're going to get results Sunday morning in Australia, probably as we're broadcasting Outsiders, so tune in for that. But walk us through the process in South Carolina. Is this one of these things where people from the other party can go and vote for the Republican and try and lift Nikki Haley's vote? Is it that kind of thing where there's crossover voting? Tell our viewers how this all goes down.
Yeah, and you asked the right question, James, because every state in our nation is a little bit different when it comes to primaries. In South Carolina, technically, we don't register by party. We register to vote, but not as a Democrat or Republican, as an independent. And essentially what happens is you can vote in any primary that you want to. You just can't vote in two. Now, the Democrats already had their primary a couple of weeks ago. Joe Biden won 90%. And if you voted in that Democrat primary, you can't vote in Republican primary. So in theory, pretty much everybody in the state could vote tomorrow because not that many people voted in the Democrat primary. In practice, mostly just Republicans vote. It's not like New Hampshire where independents typically voted the Republican primary. Here, only Republicans typically vote in the Republican primary. The polling looks really, really bad for Nikki Haley. The last number I saw, I had her down by between 28 and 32 points in her home state. There's no number of left-leaning independents or centrist voters who can save her from that type of polling disadvantage.
Well, now this is the next question then. Why is she staying in this? We spoke to Annalise Nielsen a little while ago. She said Haley is waiting for Super Tuesday to scoop up delegates and to be a candidate who's there in case something happens to Trump. How much weight do you put in that sort of theory?
Nobody knows. It sounds interesting. It sounds like it's possible, but keep in mind, just because she's still in the race doesn't mean if Donald Trump gets hit by an asteroid that she's automatically the nominee. This works by winning delegates, and Trump delegates. If Trump wins all of the delegates and then gets hit by a bus and dies, Trump delegates are not going to be voting for Nikki Haley. And even if he dies before he gets enough delegates, keep in mind, all these other people who dropped out of the race have technically only suspended their campaigns. So this week, in South Carolina, Ron DeSantis is still on the ballot. Chris Christie is still on the ballot. Vivek Ramaswamy is still on the ballot, even though they're out of the race. So no, I don't think Nikki wins by simply being the last person around who isn't named Donald Trump if something were to happen to the leading candidate.
Yeah, the mechanics of this are fascinating because there is so many things at play for both of these candidates. Trump with his legal issues, both of them with their age. It's a lot. There's a lot going on, but Trump at the same time has to still act now, I suppose, Mick, as if he is the candidate, which brings us to the question of running mate. Who would be Trump's VP? He had this to say when a list of candidates was put to him this week.
Vivek Ramaswamy, he's made a big splash. Ron DeSantis, obviously Tim Scott, Byron Donalds, Tulsi Gabbard. Very interesting. Are they all on your short list? And
what do you make of that list? Is that the short list, or are there other names on there that are not on that list that weren't mentioned that he's also got in his head?
Yeah, keep in mind, about 6 weeks ago, he said he had already made the pick, but it was a secret. Look, this is Vice President Apprentice is what it comes down to. He's going to milk this as long as he possibly can. He's a master of what we call earned media, which is getting on television for free without having to pay advertising rates and so forth. He will drag this out as long as he possibly can. The four names you and I have talked about before that seem to be the top tier are Elise Stefanik, a congresswoman from New York, Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, Tim Scott, the African-American senator from South Carolina, and my long shot, Ben Carson, the former secretary of Housing and Urban Development. So those are the four names that keep coming up. A lot of names will be thrown out, and Trump loves it when new names get added to the list because it's free advertising for him.
How much then does Trump in his head, when he's balancing these two things out, have to consider that he doesn't want somebody who's going to be too big and overshadow him, because that would be the Trump personality, with the fact that voters will look at his age and think, you know, this person has a greater shot, a greater chance of one day possibly stepping in the chair if there's a turn in Trump's health or anything else that happens?
I think that's a lot more relevant for Joe Biden. Even the folks who are starting to wonder about Donald Trump's age have not gotten to the point yet where they don't think he can serve the 4 years. They might be uncomfortable voting for him because of his age, but they don't think he's not going to make it. That Biden is really dealing with that. Kamala Harris is going to be an issue in this race for Joe Biden. I think, listen, anytime a president picks a vice president, they want to be able to look the public in the eye and say, this person is ready if something happens to me. And Trump will be wanting to do that. But I don't think it's that big a deal. I think on the Republican side, Donald Trump is such a force that he can pretty much take anybody's vice president, and it's not going to change his outcomes politically one way or the other.
Yeah, no, Mick, I think you're probably right on that one. But before I let you go, we've still got to talk about Joe Biden and the ongoing burbling impeachment inquiry. And this week we had James Biden, the brother, say that their relationship had nothing to do with his business career and that he never asked Joe Biden for official favors. And, you know, Mick, I completely believe him, and I'm sure that you do too, except for the fact that, of course, this contradicts a lot of evidence that's already out there, including bank records and checks and a number of other things. Now, to people who follow this really closely, this feels like a big deal, but does this have any political impact on the broader race, or is it just too hard at this point to get people to tune in on this sort of scandal?
Yes, but it does get people, it's hard to get people to tune in. There's so much, scandal around Hunter Biden and so forth. This story is not really making it all the way to the top here in the domestic press. It's getting a little bit of coverage, but not nearly some of the other things that are happening with Biden, for example, surrounding his age. He had more difficulties again this week. But it continues to do this, James, which is Joe Biden in 2020 was able to tell people, I'm the normal candidate. If you're tired of all of the fireworks and all of the activity, all of the craziness with Donald Trump, vote for me. This is just another piece of that falling apart. With the president's brother coming out, now being a little bit of an issue, it continues to wear away at sort of that veneer of calm and sort of sanity that Biden was pitching in 2020, that he's having a very difficult time pitching in 2024, which is one of the reasons he's struggling as bad as he is.